Hi, and welcome to a reading of a fan fiction created using characters from the universe of our game NoStranger as well as NSA Intern. I'm really excited to be joining you today to read this story. This is a fan fiction written by one of our fans, and naturally, right, credited as Ellis11. And Scott has read the story already. I haven't, so this is going to be the first time I'm seeing it, so you'll get my initial reaction, so to speak. But if you prefer to read it on your own and just skip to my thoughts, you can go to the link, which is provided right here, and it's archiveofourown.org/works/221-48452. All right. It's rated for teen and up, and there is a trigger warning or tag, let's say, of implied or reference suicide, so be aware of that. All right, with no further ado, let's jump into A Stranger in Need. This was the most embarrassing thing that had ever happened to her. Sorry, I kicked my desk. This was the most embarrassing thing that had ever happened to her. If only she had been able to sleep that night, this wouldn't have happened. Ruby, who had fallen hopelessly in love with her best friend, decided one night to turn up at her friend's house and confess her true feelings. She didn't even consider the possibility that Katie would say no, and especially not that she would yell. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said anything. Ruby was close to tears as the two girls stood on Katie's street in the middle of the night. Katie could see lights turning on in the neighboring houses, but she ignored them. She regretted raising her voice, but there was nothing she could change about that now. You can't take back words once you've said them. Just go. But please. After Ruby didn't say anything, Katie turned away and walked back down the path to her house. She couldn't bear to look at Ruby's face anymore. Ruby stood there long after Katie had gone back into her house. She could hear voices inside. Her parents must have heard the commotion. She could sometimes hear a high-pitched sob from Katie. It broke her heart to hear that. She walked herself home. Her parents weren't mad to see that she'd snuck out of the house, to her surprise. Maybe it was the tears that made them feel sorry for her, but they were only relieved that she was safe. I don't want to talk about it, Mom, Ruby sniffed. She was asked about her midnight escapade. She sighed. All right, just go back to sleep, okay? Ruby nodded, but she knew she wouldn't be able to sleep, not after all that. She got into bed and turned on her phone. She remembered an app that she installed a while ago called Kindred Spirits. Oh, damn. She was going to use it to talk to someone. She was going to use it to talk to someone. She was going to use it to talk to someone to talk to a few months back, but she had forgotten about it completely after she had started to talk to Katie. Ruby blinked back her tears. She didn't want to think about Katie now. She went into the app, and it started to connect her to another user. Within a few minutes, she was good to go. There were dots to show that someone was writing, and then a text came through. You see a man on the edge of a building. He looks like he's about to jump. Do you care if he jumps? A lump formed in Ruby's throat. Suicide was one thing she didn't want to be reminded of, especially now. Even before Katie rejected her just half an hour ago, she had thought about ending her life. She thought about it almost every day, and Katie was the only one to ever pull her out of that when it started to move to the forefront of her mind. But after their argument, who will keep her from that in the near future? She shook her head. That didn't matter now. All that matters was replying to this person. It helped her to only think about one thing at a time. She had a tendency to overthink everything. Of course I do. Adam couldn't help but laugh. Of course they would say that. Everybody does. But they only care about suicide when it directly affects them. Say the man was at home, sleeping, days away, and too depressed to even think about leaving the house to find a tall enough building to jump off of. No one would care. They would say, stop being so lazy, or just go outside and get some fresh air. They never care until it's too late. But if he jumped, would you really care? It's just another death, and he chose it. Ruby rolled her eyes. Who do they think they are? She would obviously care if someone literally killed themselves in front of her. Whoever this person was, they were beginning to annoy her. Yes, I would really care. What are you trying to get from this? Adam was surprised. Pepper had never responded in this way when he had asked her this. Oh, shit. I just thought it would be an interesting question to start off with, you know? I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable. Whatever, look. If you only message me to ask about my morals, I'm not really in the mood right now. Ruby put her phone down and took a slow, deep breath. The last thing she wanted to do was start an argument about whether people should give a shit about someone dying. She didn't understand why a debate was needed at all. Surely it was common sense to care. She had been hoping that she would find someone to make her feel better. It hadn't turned out that way. Her phone dinged, but she took her time looking at it. She really hoped it wasn't another message just casually talking about suicide like it was nothing. I feel like I didn't make a good impression earlier. I'm sorry, can we start over? Ruby was tempted to ignore them, but there was a part of her that wanted to give them another chance. All right. Adam was relieved. He thought he'd lost them. Even though he didn't necessarily have time for chit-chat, he wanted to make sure that Ruby was on his side. He needed her for this. So, where to start? Well, my name's Adam, and I like long walks on the beach. No, scratch that. My current hobby is writing. I've been doing that a lot recently. Ruby giggled, despite her frustration. You're funny, I'll give you that. I'm Ruby. I guess I don't really have anything interesting to say about myself. I'm sure you have something to say. Come on, I want to get to know you better. Ruby rolled her eyes, grinning. Fine, I like reading, I guess. I could give your book a try when it gets published. Adam smiled. It seemed like she was warming up to him. That was good. I'd love that, honestly. Speaking of books, the one I'm writing now still needs some work to be done. How about you help me? She sighed. She was hoping that this could just be a nice conversation. Of course, he would only need her for something. What is it? He noticed the hostility, but decided to keep on going. Maybe he could persuade her to help. I'm writing about the interconnectedness of people. I find psychology and how people work very interesting, and I have 2 more subjects to talk to. I would appreciate it a lot if you could help me with that. She had to read the message a couple of times. It just seemed weird that this man would go out and just randomly talk to people. What do they even talk about? She shook her head. It sounded strange to her, and even if it didn't, she didn't have enough energy for it right now. Adam had momentarily distracted her from Katie, but she was still thinking about her, and her words had been running around in her head ever since she got home. Sorry, I can't. I've been through a lot tonight. Adam rolled his eyes. She wouldn't even need to do anything. He would do all the work. All she would be doing is acting as his cover. Are you sure? It'll be fun, I promise. I'm sorry, Adam. He pinched the bridge of his nose. First Pepper, now Ruby. Why does everyone let him down? I really need this. You wouldn't need to do all that much. Just a bit of Googling. Please. If Adam was trying to wear her down, it was working. Ruby was too tired to argue with him. Fine, but if I agree to help you write your book or whatever, I get to talk about what I've gone through tonight. It's all I wanted. Now he was beginning to feel frustrated. Can't she just help him? He doesn't have time for this. He started to respond. Anger started to bubble up in his chest. He was about to send a message when he stopped himself. How long would it take to finally find someone who would see all this the same way as him? Maybe he should just hear her out. Who knows? Maybe it wouldn't be so bad. He deleted the initial angry message and tried again. It was hard to put his emotions to the side, but it would hopefully be for the best. All right, I can work with that. What do you want to talk about? Ruby breathed a sigh of relief. She didn't know what would happen if she couldn't talk about it. Of course, she could talk to her parents, but it was incredibly difficult to be vulnerable with them. All she needed was a stranger to talk to. That was it. I have this best friend called Katie. We met in class, and we've talked for a few months. I know it hasn't been long, but I really started to fall in love with her. I don't know if you know what that feels like, but once it's there, it's so hard to get rid of. So I told her. I couldn't sleep tonight. So I went round her house to tell her that I loved her. She was telling me we couldn't be together. There was no way in hell, she said. And I don't know why she was so aggressive, but she started yelling when I wouldn't let her go. It broke my heart, Adam. She couldn't continue. The lump in her throat reappeared, and she started to cry again. It was surprising since she thought that she had run out of tears hours ago. Adam had never been one to cry all that much, so when a tear rolled down his cheek, he acted like it was something completely new to him. Everything that Ruby was saying reminded him of Pepper. He covered his face and let out a scream of frustration. It wasn't meant to happen like this. He wasn't supposed to let his emotions get in the way. They ruin everything. He was about to get up and walk away when he noticed he had a message. Adam, did you read my message? Sorry, I just really needed to talk to you right now. He took a deep breath. If she needed him so badly, then maybe he could play along. I'm very sorry to hear that. Is there anything I could do? No, just thank you for being here. Adam smiled. At least one good thing could come out of this. Someone actually liked speaking to him. He hadn't felt like that for the longest time. He sat there for a while, wondering. If Ruby could talk about an experience that had clearly hurt her, could he do the same about Pepper? He had never told anyone the full story about what had happened between them. Would Ruby not like him anymore? He decided he didn't have anything to lose here, so he took a leap of faith. Hey, while we're here, can I tell you something too? Sure, go ahead. It took a very long time and some backtracking, but Adam finally told Ruby about Pepper. He, of course, didn't tell her the whole truth, but he told her what he could. He told her how they'd met, how she'd helped her with writing his book, and how eventually they broke up. He felt stupid telling her how in love he was, but he felt like he couldn't leave that kind of emotion out when Ruby had been so vulnerable with him. He couldn't quite know what was compelling him to do this. After all, he had kept all this a secret for years. Why would he bother telling anyone now? But he felt good about it, and he still wanted her back more than anything. Talking with a friend was a temporary solution. It took a while for her to process everything Adam had told her. She had been so busy living in her own head that it took a while to realize that he was going through the exact same experience as her. It made her feel better that she wasn't alone. After sending that message, Adam didn't quite know what to do with himself. He couldn't remember the last time that he had been open with someone. It was strange to think about. His heart was racing just thinking about how Ruby would react and what she would say. He laughed. Why did he care about what she thought? Even so, it took a while for him to calm down. I'm sorry you had to go through that, Adam. I know it's awful, but I'm glad you told me about it. Thanks for listening to me. Ruby checked the time on her phone. It was 4 a.m. The sun would rise in about an hour, so she decided to stay up and see it. She had many sleepless nights like this, so what was one more? She wondered if Adam would get to see the sunrise too. Hey, what time is it where you are? About 4 a.m. I know, it's so late, but I'm not even tired. Ruby smiled. Another thing in common. Me neither. I guess you live in New York too. Have you ever seen the sunrise here before? It's beautiful. A couple of times, yeah. Sometimes I'm working late on my boat. Cool. We could watch it together. That would be nice. Adam sat up in his bed and stretched. He had planned on getting more of his research done tonight, but he had completely forgotten about it. Funny how that works. A few hours ago, nothing would have stopped him from getting it done, but now it seemed to matter a little less to him. Maybe he would change his mind in the morning, or later in the morning, technically speaking. But for now, he decided to just keep Ruby company and watch the sunrise come over the skyscrapers. Usually, at this time of night, it would take all his willpower not to jump off his balcony. But tonight, he felt different. He felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted. And maybe it had, thanks to her. Awesome! All right, so there's the story. Wow. I love this. I love this so much. This made me so happy. You could probably tell I was smiling the whole while through. But one of the most awesome things about creating a story is seeing how different characters are going to just interpret, how different readers are going to interpret those characters and events, and whether it's in their mind filling in the blanks or literally creating a new work of art like this piece. It's really exciting to see what they do with it. And I think fan art, and though I haven't read as much fan fiction, has always inspired me in that sense. When we wrote the story, we intentionally left a lot of blank spots. You know, I think Scott and I had an idea, perhaps separate ideas, of what happened in the interim between certain scenes of our work and stuff that was left unsaid. So what does Adam's full backstory look like exactly? What does the conversation between Katie and Ruby look like? We didn't define those exactly, and I think it's to some degree because we want the player to fill in those blanks on their own. And I think seeing that as an opportunity to create a new work is just really awesome, and I think it builds off what we did, and it creates something new at the same time. Um, this piece reminded me of a person I met. I met somebody over Xbox Live. This is like a Xbox Live is basically like the internet for Xbox, where when you're playing a game of Halo, I would match with other people, and you'd form friends with these people because you'd want to have basically your electronic friends list in order to party up, and you'd go on adventures with these people, and you'd have these the microphones and form relationships. And I remember I got to know this guy pretty well who lived in another state. I think it was Alabama. And it was really interesting because that person was probably the closest I've ever come to like a stranger. But then again, I guess all friends, when you get to know them, are strangers. I think it's just interesting because this is someone who I've never met. And I dated someone in middle school who lived in a different state than me. We met over Skype and, more or less broke up over Skype. We never met in person over the 11 months that we dated in middle school. And it's funny because I feel like a lot of people probably growing up in this age, with all the internet and the good and bad it brings, probably have a lot of relationships of that ilk. And a lot of people can probably empathize with the idea of building a friendship between someone who maybe they've never met in person, or their relationship has been mostly online. And I think what's so interesting is that despite that, you can have such a deep, meaningful connection. I like the time within our narrative that this story takes place, because it almost suggests that if Adam or Ruby had found a friend in their time of need, they could have been saved from making the destructive decisions that they did. And I think that's a really exciting idea. I think that's a really exciting idea, and it's something that we've played with too. I think it'd be really awesome to envision what a character would be like playing another video game. Like if one of my characters from NSA Intern, Ruby, came to NoStranger and plays the game as Ruby, like what would that experience be like? It's something we talked about. I talked with Scott for a while about maybe implementing a version of NoStranger, another part of Kindred Spirits, which allows you to just match in a conversation with another player of the game. And man, I still feel like that'd be really cool, but I question, what is the responsible breadth of NoStranger? Should it extend to that area, or is that realm something that we could let our players explore in things like fan fiction or fan art and stuff like that? It's a cool idea though, right? And it's something that if I had all the time in the world, I'd love to dedicate time to. But I love this piece. I'm gonna give some kudos. Okay, right on. I give some kudos. And if you're interested in checking it out or other works by Ellis, definitely do check that out. Because to my understanding, they're putting out some really great work. And they also have a fan fiction on NSA Intern following the OG intern Glassy. So maybe the OG intern of Glassy, which is named Lincoln. So maybe we'll see that come to light in the future at some time. I'd love to read it as well. All right, thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this reading of A Stranger in Need.